I'm depressed. Have you said that before? I'm sure that most of us have said that at least once in our life, if not multiple times. We say it so lightly and casually as if we're saying, I'm hungry or I'm sleepy. But for some people, depression is more than just a feeling. Hi, I'm Pascal, and I'm a PhD candidate in neuroscience at McGill University, and I'm here to talk about depression and what I do in the lab to study it. Major depressive disorder is the diagnosis term given to those who are determined to be clinically depressed. To be officially diagnosed with depression, one must have, within 2 weeks, at least 5 symptoms related to depression. Those can include loss of pleasure in normally pleasurable activities, changes in appetite, changes in sleeping patterns, feelings of worthlessness and guilt, and suicidal thoughts sometimes. According to a cross-national study, 1 in every 6 individuals will develop major depressive disorder in their lifetime. Depression and suicide are closely related to one another. Half of those who died by suicide had been diagnosed with depression. And those who have depression are 20 times more likely to die by suicide. According to the World Health Organization, 700,000 people die by suicide every year. And it is the 4th leading cause of death among individuals from 15 to 29 years of age. People like me. There are even differences between males and females when it comes to depression and suicide. And by males and females, I'm talking about biological sex at birth. While females are more likely to have depression, males are more likely to die by suicide. Just as much as any other disease, such as cancer or diabetes, reduce the lifespan and imposes changes to normal living, so can depression. I hope that you consider depression a very serious disorder. Now, some might come and say, it's okay, you can take an antidepressant pill, you'll be fine. Unfortunately, that kind of pill doesn't work for more than half of patients with depression. Even if it does work, it could take weeks to feel an effect, and there are negative side effects that come with this medication. Having said all that, it is clear that we do not have the perfect solution yet, and there is an urgent need to develop new treatments for depression, especially considering the global burden that the world faces and will continue to face. To develop new treatments, we must first better understand what is going on in one's head and body when they are depressed in order to fix it. One theory is that the cells within our brain are not communicating properly during depression. This is why in my research, specifically, I asked the question, how do brain cells talk to each other when depressed? Have you heard of the term synapse? Action potential? Have you seen the shape of a brain cell or a neuron? Neurons talk to each other by sending electric signals, or action potentials, down their cables, or axons. Action potentials reach the end of a neuron and jump to the next through a junction called the synapse. And this is how the message is propagated. You can think of these as handshakes between cells. However, I'm not here to talk about the typical electric signals that neurons use to communicate, because we already know a lot about it. In fact, the current treatments that we have for depression are based on studying these handshakes. And as I mentioned earlier, treatments don't really work. What I do want to talk about is rather a newly discovered way cells can communicate. Extracellular vesicles. Let's call them EVs to avoid unnecessary tongue twisting. They are a newly discovered way cells can communicate, not only in the brain, but everywhere in the body, even between different organs. So if synapses can be thought of as handshakes, EVs can be thought of more like long-distance mail. Now, you may be thinking, what exactly are EVs? Well, they are tiny sacs produced by cells, and I mean tiny, on the nanoscale level, which is 10,000 times smaller than a grain of sand. You might think in order to see such a small object, you would need a small microscope, just like the one we saw earlier. But actually, that's not the case. We need the biggest microscope. Have you heard of electron microscopes? The rumors are true. They are gigantic microscopes that need an entire room for themselves. I have been fortunate to use an electron microscope to take real images of brain EVs. And they look like this. They look like donuts, right? I think it's awesome. Back to the main topic. Cells fill EVs with bioactive molecules, which are molecules that have an impact when they enter other cells. Cells then send out EVs to circulate in the body, in the blood, for example, where they can reach other cells and deliver those molecules. And this can lead to a change of function in the recipient cell. This is why EVs are considered a means of communication. Imagine EVs as the envelopes used in mail, and the molecules inside as the messages inside the envelopes. Some messages might have a very serious vibe with no emojis. Other messages might be full of emojis and even drawings of unicorns and rainbows. After reading such messages, one would be left with specific thoughts and emotions that could lead to certain actions, depending on what was inside the message. EVs have a very similar function between cells. Now, could the messages, or in other words, molecules in brain EVs, differ between those who have depression and those who don't? What are the cells telling each other? And are there any differences between males and females? To answer this question, I work at the Douglas Hospital Research Center in a lab. I work with post-mortem human brain tissue, which is tissue derived from individuals who have passed away and which was donated for research. Now, before you ask me, what does it feel like to cut up human brains? I don't do that. I simply order a specific piece of the brain. In my case, a piece from the anterior cingulate cortex, which is a brain area located towards the front of the brain, but slightly deeper into the middle. In fact, the anterior cingulate cortex is located in a very strategic area in the brain because it is connected to both cognitive and emotional systems, making it perfect to study depression. And in fact, several studies have already shown changes in this brain area in depression. Now, after I receive my samples, which include samples from individuals who had depression and died by suicide, as well as individuals with no psychiatric illness and who died naturally or by accident, I proceed with a very long protocol that takes all day to remove the EVs from the brain tissue. And then I use other techniques in order to identify the molecules inside and compare them between those who have depression and those who don't. So far, I have found that there actually are changes in the messages in brain EVs, not only in depression, but there are differences between males and females. What I have also found, and what I think, is that these changes might be affecting the way neurons can do their handshakes, which I think is super cool. Now, to sum up, I work in a very novel avenue of research by studying a newly discovered way cells can communicate. I hope that my research will contribute to the growing body of knowledge around what goes on in the brain, molecularly, when one is depressed, and why males and females are so different. Hopefully, with the combined efforts of everyone who studies depression, better and more effective treatments will become available for patients, and this can hopefully prevent suicide. Never underestimate the power of the way you write your messages to one another. But when we say communication is key, it's not only between humans, but also between cells. It can really make a difference. Thank you.